Welcome back to Funky Politics, the hardest hitting political show on the planet. You know, just as the commercial just stated, I am DC, and guess what? This is Funky Politics, and you know what? We're powered by the Kazuki Network, and it's a funky kind of Friday, folks. It's a funky kind of Friday. Get excited for those of for those of us who already done everything we need to do between Monday and Friday. This is a weekend coming up, right? But those who are not off on Saturdays and Sundays, hey, look, this whatever the weekend is to you can be the weekend. But today is a funky kind of Friday. And speaking of a funky kind of Friday, me and about 40 million of my other friends out there, we've been thinking about this thing. You know, if it wasn't for TMZ and cell phones, where would we be? You know, there is just so much you can capture with this thing called a phone, right? A cell phone, and the video has been riveting. Of course, the Los Angeles Police Department helped us some years ago with the filming of the beating of Rodney King. But I will say this, you know, it's a sad day in America. It's a sad day in the world when you try to do right, wrong comes on you. But I will say this. We'll say that a little bit for later on, but we'll talk a little bit more about police brutality and so forth with our guests as we get into this thing. But hey, getting right on down to this thing again, it goes without saying, hey, July, we need a stimulus. We need another stimulus package, y'all. We've got 44 plus million Americans that are still out of work. At some point, and I will say this, that the Federal Reserve Chairman has stated he thinks that the Congress should extend unemployment benefits. Don't hold me to it. I believe it's going to happen, but we've got about 44 million folks out there who are trying to find work, who've not gone back to work, who are receiving those unemployment benefits. But on the flip side of that, y'all, it's tough out here in America. Mr. President, that letter you sent me the last time, won't you do it again? Send me another 1,200. I need 12,000 this time. Don't just send me 1,200. Send me 12,000. But again, I will say this, the Congress needs to go to work, and let's come up with another stimulus that works for America, that takes care of our small businesses, but also takes care of these folks who's getting ready to face one of the largest. July is going to be a real telltale sign in our country of how benevolent we can be. Of course, most people know that the courts have been shut down for the last several months, but the last 3 months. Evictions have been filed. They are in the process now of going through that. I understand that until a certain part in July, they will not be evicting people. But understand something: these rental payments are due, and we've got a lot of folks out there who are renting. We have 43 plus. I looked at the stats: about 43 million plus American families who are renting. Major cities like Miami, major cities like Boston, like New York, these are rental places. And if you don't watch out, I'm telling you right now, we're going to have a lot of homeless folks out there, y'all. We got to take care of our business. Come on, Congress, right past something that says you can't put these folks out on the streets. I know these people have got to make their mortgage payments on their rental properties, but you can't put Americans out on the street, not during a pandemic, folks. That's all I got to say about that. Shout out to Black Lives Matter. Black lives still matter, y'all. You hear what I'm saying? Black lives still matter. Our good president has decided that he has helped propel Juneteenth into what it's been known for over the last 200 plus years. He says if it wasn't for him, folks would not know that Juneteenth was basically something to be revered. I don't think there's any doubt about it that this president believes that his way of thinking is right. I think November 3rd is going to prove to him that his thinking is wrong. No doubt about it. But Juneteenth has been around for some time. 2 years later, after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, folks in Texas got the word that, hey, slavery had ended. Slavery had ended for the most part. Legally, slavery had ended. But, of course, Juneteenth commemorates that, and I want to celebrate the releasing of those last soldiers who were out there on the battlefield, out there still tilling the soil. And then after that, guess what? We became sharecroppers, and that was just a whole nother deal right there. But speaking of getting things done, and we got things done, we built the country. We got a young man in the studio today, Preston Lauterbach. Preston Lauterbach, my God, he's been on this show several times. He's a phenomenal guy. Preston is an author who has written Beale Street Dynasty, Sex Song and the Struggle for the Soul of Memphis, the Chittlin Circuit and the Road to Rock and Roll. and Bluff City, The Secret Life of Photographer Ernest Whithers. So grab your coffee, or if you like me, you like to wake up a little bit of Jack in your cup, get a little bit of coffee, a little bit of Java, and a little bit of Jack, put it together, and we'll see you right back in just a second with our very, very famous guest, author Preston Lauterbach, right here on Funky Politics. And we are back with Preston Lauterbach. Hey, Brother Preston, how are you, sir?
Hey, great. I didn't get word about putting cognac in the cup until just now, so I'm a little behind, unfortunately, but I'll get there.
Sometimes I have to eat my breakfast. I have to drink it too at the same time, so that's
Absolutely.
how it works.
Liquid diet, man. Limit those calories.
I like the way you said limit those calories.
Yeah.
Preston, for our listeners and viewers out there, tell us a little bit about your journey from, Richmond, Virginia, to you being raised in San Diego, and the time you spent here locally in Memphis, and now you're back in Virginia. Who is Preston Lauterbach, and man, what's up? What's up? We know what's up, and it ain't all good.
And you mentioned the titles of my books, and so what I've ended up doing with my life is to try to bring some, sense of justice where it has been lacking in terms of African American history and culture, and that came out of my personal roots in a really unexpected way. You mentioned my birthplace, Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah.
Well, those monuments that are now being torn down were held up to me as heroes in my youth. And so, I come from a background that celebrates what is being torn down. Obviously, that's not what I stand for now and what I have worked for. But to be raised, to be from Southern culture and Confederate culture, but then to be raised outside of it in San Diego, California, gave me a broader perspective on these things. I wasn't just bombarded with General Lee as a god and all this. I had another family and another society really to grow up in. And so, where I was raised in San Diego was much more diverse. Not to say that it wasn't, racially segregated as a city, but at least my little slice of it as a child, when my brain was forming, it did so around people of all backgrounds, nationalities, shades, and colors. And so I saw that, and I saw what was going on in my birthplace of Richmond. And it, from the very beginning, it just always kind of perplexed me. My father was an outspoken racist.
Oh, wow.
I heard N-word every other word. And yet there was confusion there, because anytime African-American people came around my father, he changed. He kind of relaxed, and he conversed with African-American people in a way that was more happy and upbeat than I saw him with other people. So to me, I was like, well, which is the right answer? I mean, is it N-word or is it what I see? And so I was always very curious about race and how people get along. And that's the beginning of it for me. I'm blessed to have, like I said, different perspectives on it.
Sure. Well, before I get into, we don't talk about Jackson Ward.
Yeah.
I want to stay a little bit there with the San Diego area. One thing about, I think, Southern California, and especially San Diego, you have this huge military installation there that has afforded all types of cultures and people of different races mixed in. And so did that help play a part into maybe that change? Because I understand now, not only did you go to Flagler in St. Augustine, which is another bastion of, we could talk about that too, but Ole Miss, you spent some time at Ole Miss, and right now they're really going through it down on the campus, and I call it Old Mississippi. They're trying, and I think they've decided to go ahead and to remove one of the statues and put it in the cemetery area.
That's the latest that I've heard there too.
Where it really belongs. I mean,
and San Diego people know it's an extremely laid back town. I mean,
wow.
if America is a complacent nation, San Diego is a deeper complacence.
Whoa.
People move to San Diego to get away from history. They don't want to contend with all of that. They're all about things being nice. And so when I saw those banks get burned, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a different level. If San Diego can go all in on a protest, this is something else. This is something that we haven't seen in this country before. And so I loved it. I mean, I love the monuments being torn down.
Yeah.
I love seeing those banks go down, because the problem hasn't been everybody's problem. You understand? It's been a black problem.
Yeah.
Make it everybody's problem. Yeah. And understand how to make it everybody's problem. Otherwise, it's going to continue to be ignored. And so what I saw happen in San Diego shocked me and really raised my spirits. And what I'm seeing on the streets of Richmond does the exact same, because people are not waiting. They're taking matters into their own hands.
And I think, man, we're going to have to stay there. And this is just personal opinion aside. I mean, personal opinion here. I think the young people now probably looked at what myself, well, not necessarily me, but my parents did in terms of the civil rights movement and said, okay, you had some battles you won. You didn't win the war at all by any measure. And then they they martyred your leader. And then you got nothing in the 70s but drugs on the streets and warfare. I think these young folks now, what I've seen, Preston, and I've got a 20 and a 19-year-old. These folks aren't having it. They say, you know what? They're like Tamika Mallory. They said, be damned AutoZone, be damned Target. Where were they at on the streets with us? And I've got to give the sister some praise, because she stood out there and she said, don't worry about the protesters and the riots. You need to worry about the people who have propagated this type of thing over the years.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's take a walk. Let's take a little. Go ahead. You got a comment? Go ahead.
No, I was simply going to say that's 100%. It's that younger demographic. Yeah. My family and I were watching the mayor of Richmond, who's a young black man, right?
Wow.
So
LeVar. Yeah.
Him getting absolutely shouted down by this crowd who confronted him outside of City Hall about a week and a half ago. It was the mayor and the chief of police, who's a white man. But that told me, again, something different about this generation, which is we're not going to be satisfied with symbols. Just to elect a young African-American man as a leader, as a mayor, is not enough. He has to do things. He has to implement change. He can't simply symbolize it. And look, I mean, this is also a generation that saw an Obama presidency, which was a great triumph on one level, and then grassroots racism like we hadn't seen in 50 years at the exact same time. So you know what's up. It's not just all about symbolism. It's about real change.
Yeah. I want to stay right there in Richmond with you. Let's talk Jackson Ward. As a Black Wall Street in Richmond, and there's Black Wall Streets that are all over our country. Look at Tulsa, right? Getting ready to celebrate what's the reinvigorating of that particular community. But in terms of Richmond and how Jackson Ward began as this oasis, and like so many other centers in our Black cities, all of a sudden there was urban renewal. Right before urban renewal, there were the 40s when we had to have public housing. But they went in and decimated these communities right here. We talked about this before on the show, right here in Memphis. Public housing was put up, but there were homes there at one time.
Exactly.
Preston, how does a country like that juxtapose itself and say, I'm going to tear down your structures and build a superstructure to put all of you all in one spot?
Yeah, I mean, that's that pattern has been repeated in virtually every city across the country.
Sure,
and like I said about San Diego, there the race problems, if you will, or the fact of racial segregation and economic segregation is so hard to see, because like if you're in a place like Richmond, if you're in a place like Memphis, it's not hard to see. Yeah, in fact, it's hard to miss. Right. And so you've seen different implementations of that program carried out in different ways in different places, but it's the same end result, which is exactly what you speak of there. And in Jackson Ward, the proximity to the white community and Monument Avenue is so intimate. One day, not long ago, before it was probably about 2 years ago, my family and I were going through Jackson Ward and looking at all of the old buildings. There's a beautiful statue there of Maggie Walker, who started I think she's the first, she's kind of like the Robert Church, figure of Richmond, a millionaire who started a bank, African-American lady. And so we're going through the neighborhood, and I kind of just looked up a side street, and I'm looking straight up the ass of Stonewall Jackson's horse on his statue.
Whoa.
You understand? And so that's something that symbolism wasn't lost on people. I wasn't the first person to ever see that. I wasn't the first person to notice that. And so in some places, it's put way off to the side to where nobody even knows, to where it's kept secret in a way from the community at large. But in Richmond, it has been just put in people's faces.
Wow. COVID-19 has just, I guess, to kind of pivot a little bit, COVID-19 has gone anywhere. I mean, it's just spread. I mean, it's something that we were already dealing with in entrenched poverty in our country, and COVID-19 has not helped it at all. We promote ourselves as a country, the land of the free and home of the brave, but we've conspired so long to create these permanent underclasses. With what you're saying in Richmond, how you have the Avenue of the Monuments, but you got the backside of Stonewall Jackson's horse's ass
Yep.
facing one of the most iconic areas in the world for Black
Yep.
people.
Yep.
Then you got the classroom of prison to prison pipelines. You got police. How does America recover, Preston? How do we recover and say that we're going to stamp? This is a loaded question, of course. We've got to stamp out racism, right? It's a pandemic. It's like COVID. It's a pandemic.
I'm as a historian who has researched race history and then kind of interfaced with the white public about it, I'm always shocked at how little people know. And I don't understand why that is, because it wasn't actually that hard for me to learn about the fact that, Black musicians invented rock and roll. The fact that, there was a Black millionaire in Memphis and his son was the most powerful Black politician in the United States 100 years ago. The information is out there. It's, are we open to it? It's who are we? Right now, white people all want their Black friend to explain what to do. Don't put that on your Black friend. Don't put that on anybody. That's you. That's your responsibility. Only you know what your deep innermost thoughts are, and you can understand where they came from and how to untangle them. You can't just, pay a guilt tax to Black Lives Matter and be on with it. You got to look at yourself. And so the solution is rooted in every individual doing. And it's not hard work. It's simply taking a little bit of time. And I think it's very fulfilling work. Like I said, came from a racist background and made myself a better person. Yeah. Isn't that what we all want to try and do? Sure. And that's what it takes. You gotta look inside yourself and say, what do I really think? What do I really know? What do I really believe about these things? Not just what can I post on Facebook to look right.
A lot of us do that, don't we? We want to show the world that we're woke. And
yeah, exactly.
You're really not as woke as you think you are. Speaking of placing things on Facebook, I mean, of course, the protests that have not just in America. I mean, Preston, in your lifetime, I've never seen allies show up in Poland, in Switzerland, in Denmark, Finland, Sweden, places that the number of Black people probably are in the lower 3 to 4%, maybe 2% of the population, but they're standing in solidarity with Black folks saying racism has got to go and Black lives do matter. Dr. King, he argued that worsening economic and social conditions that Black Americans experience must be condemned. Equal as riots. And people are, they're rioting, they're tearing down all this stuff. He said a riot is the language of the unheard.
Exactly.
And we can't walk those words back. He said that. Now, how do you interpret those words? He said, but that is what he said. The riot is the language of the unheard. People have been unheard, man, for hundreds of years now. And I think right now, as we just said earlier, those young folks, right, Preston, have been are really to see white and Black. Have you seen this before?
Absolutely. No, I have not to this level at all. And it's tremendous. And, taking it to the world the way that you just did and describing the massive demonstrations in Amsterdam and London and in Rome, to me, that shows, not only the solidarity of, I guess the new thing about that is what you said. They're not actually in touch firsthand with large groups of Black people. They have of course, they have their own stories of fascism and oppression in every country that they can relate to. To me, I think it speaks to the beauty of Black culture and the power and the influence of the fact that now virtually everything in the West is based on Black creativity. When you think about, music primarily, which is my area, when you look at fashion, the way that people are dressing out there. And I go back to my youth coming up, me and kids of different backgrounds, we always got on those same basic things. Music was a big one. Passing around the spliff was a big one. People get together on these little simple things that we can all agree on. But now there's something more profound growing from that.
Cities like Richmond, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, just a numerous amount of American cities all around. I think we have to, with the protest, we have to reckon ourselves or juxtapose some kind of way our policing.
Yes.
The defund the police, and this is my simple opinion, defund the police won't work. But reorganizing police departments, reallocating funds, I think will work. But we've had community policing now in this country. I think it was a policy that began under, was it President Clinton, I believe it was. And so if community policing began better than 25 years ago, has Officer Friendly been asleep on the job? Because, you know, we are still getting the same outcomes prior to community policing, if not worse.
You know, the one piece of history that I keep relating this back to in the calls for reforming the police, defunding the police, changing the police, right there in Memphis in 1866 was the brutal massacre, which was carried out by the white police force against the black citizenship. And 46 people lost their lives, and there was massive property destruction across what was then a brand new black community. Churches, schools, residences burned to the ground, lives destroyed. And the police department actually was totally disbanded at that point. The governor of Tennessee came in, fired them all, put a whole new leadership structure in place. Okay, that's great. We've had 150 years since then to see that it didn't work long term. Memphis has had, you know, endemic police brutality for most of that time. And so just changing, you can change things without changing anything. You got to have a vision and a plan for doing it in a way that is different. And you actually mentioned the prison pipeline earlier, and so policing is connected to that issue.
Sure.
You mentioned the flood of drugs into the quote unquote inner city earlier, and you know that is a historical issue that is connected to these larger issues that we're discussing. At the same time, you know, I would try and get back to a simple solution. Look at what the problems are, be honest about what the problems are. Don't get caught up in endless debate and entanglement about, there's so much rhetoric being thrown around. It's misleading and it doesn't matter. The thing that matters is innocent people are losing their lives. Don't lose sight of that. Yeah. You know, innocent people's lives are being destroyed by a penal system that is designed to imprison them. You know, yeah. Can we not fix that? It's not hard to understand.
You have an education system with implicit bias. And I'll say this, it didn't just start yesterday.
No.
I think implicit bias, once integration took hold, you had implicit bias from Jump Street. I mean, it had to occur because look at what we produced from an educational standpoint. We're not winning. We may be the land of the free and the home of the brave, but we're not winning. I know the president wants to believe that we are winning. I don't think we're winning right now. You know, I think we're losing, and there is no one to compare us to. You can't compare us to Britain because it's a whole separate type of government they have. But I don't think we're winning this war right here at all.
I'll tell you what, though, you got to feel good about it because of getting back to the youth of the protesters and the intensity of the protest, the unyielding protest. They're not going anywhere.
No,
they're not leaving. They're not going to be satisfied with, you know, with whatever they've been given in the past. They're not going anywhere. And they are going to force accountability. And I hope, you know, politicians have been geared to do as little as possible, give as little as possible. These kids aren't going anywhere.
No, they're around for a long time. They're around for a long time to come. You know, speaking of, these monuments and things, of course, we've had them in our city here in Memphis, and we've had some very strong leadership out there on the ground. You got the Van Turners and you got the Tammy Sawyers who are out there who were leading the charge. And of course, the city stepped in with the mayor here, Jim Strickland, and they got together and those things were put away. We just had a court case that said, hey, we can do away with this thing right now. We're going to go ahead and let this guy and his wife rest somewhere else. I don't even want to mention his name. Mm-hmm. But now you've got Robert E. Lee that sits atop a horse right there in the Avenue of the Monuments. And this thing sits, what I've seen, I'm like, it's amazing. Was that intimidation? Is that what it was meant to do, to intimidate, or was it meant to celebrate when this thing was out there?
That's funny. That I love the way that you put that. I think it's a perfect two sides of the coin, because the supporters of that legacy always say heritage, not hate, right?
Yeah, I know.
So they say that.
Yeah.
Let's just say, okay, fine. Let's accept it. All right, let's believe it. The problem with that is you have a portion of the community that does feel intimidated, that does feel as if that's being put there to frighten, to disrespect,
Sure.
to conjure all of this negativity. And so even if you feel like that wasn't your intention in putting the monument there, if a portion of your community feels disrespected about it, then you have to take it down. Again, these are very simple issues when you deconstruct all of it. You have to, like I said, even if you had the best of intentions, which
Sure.
we can debate. Let's just say, yeah, sure, they had the best of intentions. Then you got half the population that feels offended by that. So
Sure.
to me, it's a no-brainer. It's got to come down.
Nobody in your school, Ole Miss, and I will say this, that the Southeastern Conference came out with a statement the other day, and they put the state of Mississippi on notice. We will not hold any NCAA SEC championships in the state of Mississippi with the flag that looks like it looks. That speaks volumes. What I'm seeing now, NASCAR saying there will be no Confederate flags brought into any of our facilities. If your car has it on it, it's got to go. There's none in the stands. I've gone through Talladega during July when I'm going to tell you something. I've been down to Daytona 500 in Daytona, and I'm telling you, I've seen more campers with those flags flying than they had the U.S. flag.
Yeah.
This is going to be a game changer for some people. What do you say, Preston, to those folks who say, look, I understand what you're saying, just like you said again about heritage, but somebody tricked me way back when and told me that flag represented honor, duty, and chivalry and all of those things and states' rights. But I was miseducated. Apparently, was I not, to be told that?
I think that's what has taken place.
Sure.
And that's why a lot of white people have a difficult time with racism, with untangling it, because look, I came up in a system. I believe that whites are miseducated. I believe that we are mistaught. We are taught wrong. We are, it's not like we are all raised to celebrate white supremacy.
No doubt.
But it's harder to deal with than that, is what I'm saying. Like it's on a deeper level. It comes down to depiction. I feel like to take a little bit of a turn from this, the flap over the film Gone with the Wind is really interesting to me because that's actually I think that's a teachable situation there. Certainly the depiction of the Black characters does not capture the totality of their humanity, and it puts them in a certain light. It would have been fascinating if the filmmakers understood that was masking and that was a survival tactic, and to have been able to show, the truth and the depth of Black character beyond the mammy mask.
Sure.
But let's understand these things for what they really are. Don't just throw it away, okay? Let's pause for a second. And the same thing with the monuments. Let's understand the point of view that got them made. And it's a way for whites to be able to set themselves off from that, to say, I'm not that. That's not me anymore. We have evolved. We have changed. We don't need to celebrate these things. I have been brainwashed with code words.
Sure.
People got to understand that too. It's happened to us. It's shocking to us, but it's the truth.
Do you think that whites will, in your opinion, do you think whites will say, look, I guess not half, maybe some will say, hey, look, I have, I will admit the fact that I was brought up and I was taught wrong. Just like some of us on my side have to say that I was miseducated by all white folks ain't bad. And they say all Black folks ain't good, but just to converse to that as well, all white folks ain't good. And all, so will your folks?
Absolutely. I see a better America coming out of all of this. I see a better America coming out of the pandemic. I see, because we haven't seen so much energy put into the idea of change. Of course, people are going to be receptive to it. I've lived it, and so I know that it can be done. I've talked with other whites who are struggling with this and attempting to get there. It's sometimes funny how they do it, but it's a healthy process nevertheless. That we got to try and I try and be supportive of and try and hold hands and go real slow.
That's right.
Because it is shocking for people. I actually did a book club talk with a group of suburban housewives about Beale Street Dynasty. And they were all white. They were older women, and they were so shocked at everything that's depicted in that particular history. And again, I get back to this idea, this concept that things have been hidden from us. Yeah. We don't have access to all of the information and the truth as whites, and we do have to hunt a little bit for it, but it is there. And I think that the good people will try to make these changes. They will do the work to evolve. And on the other side of it, I definitely see a better America. And that has been my hope for this presidency all along, is that he would energize the opposition to a new place. And my gosh, it's happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where that place is right now, but yeah, I want to go to another place. I want to go back to California.
Okay.
I've traveled there. Oh, God, beautiful state. But, for it to be a laid back state with people who are I would consider them more liberal than most of the country, right?
Yeah.
Why does it seem like their law enforcement officers have this dogmatic approach to policing? And it's just not in LA. It's in Sacramento. Yeah. It's in San Diego, Oakland. I mean, Oakland of all places.
San Francisco, yeah.
And you look down the list of cities and where you've had a lot of major disturbances, especially killings, and you have to look at California. I look at the citizenry, but then I look at the police, and I see two different styles there, or two different people. What you live there? Why is that?
Man, that's a great observation, and I don't have a great answer for you on that, but it's absolutely true. It's a strange situation. California is certainly, seen as more progressive politically, and you can look at tons of examples of that. But are any of the examples of California's progress? Well, I mean, some of them are to do with race in terms of immigration. I don't know if California has been as fast, as progressive on the issue of race as it could have been. And so maybe that's where the answer lies. I mean, it's crazy. So a friend of mine who's from Mississippi sent me this viral video of a guy in the grocery store with a Klan hood on. And he told me, he said, "Your governor's gone to the store."
Oh, wow. Oh, talking about Northern, right?
Well, but look, it turned out that the person who was in that getup was maybe 10 miles from my neighborhood in San Diego. And so there's always been a strong redneck element to that culture. And so look, you got a lot of people in California who, and I'm thinking about this out loud right now and kind of processing your question. You got a lot of people in California from predominantly white areas like the Midwest. I would say the Midwest is probably the biggest feeder of and Arizona. Arizona is a major California feeder, and Arizona is, I mean, like one step from Germany in 1938 with some of its views. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Arizona's as redneck as it gets.
Funny you say that, though, because you would think, well, now it's just like Florida. You have all these, what do they call them, the snowbirds or whatever. You got all these folks that left the New Yorks and the Chicagos, and they had to go somewhere. And I don't even want to call out the nationalities that settled in the Midwest, because we know what Cleveland looked like. We know what Boston looked like. And these folks have filtered out into the country. And apparently this is what we're getting. Some of that great mix of immigrants that came in, now all of a sudden don't want other people that don't look like them around. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, that, everybody's from somewhere, and that could have a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Well, Preston, we got to get out of here, but you got any parting thoughts? Are you working on anything new that we're going to be able to get our hands on real soon to read? or a movie or something. There's got to be something out there that you're doing.
There's a bunch of stuff going on. Yes.
Other than taking down the Robert E. Lee statue there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
In
A little architecture to handle first, but or demo work, I guess. No, but yeah, tons of stuff. Really, I'm working on adapting my books into motion picture or TV series.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking about developing a podcast on the Kazukian Network that I hope
Whoa.
you'll hear more
You
about.
become a member of the family. Well, you've always been a member of the family, though. Always been a member of the family, buddy. Wow.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate it. But yeah, I always got a lot going on, and I love connecting with you. And ain't nothing like the funky politics. It's the best.
Let me tell you, man, it gets funky around this place. It gets real, and you know Memphis. It gets funky. It's Chittlin funky in Memphis some days, right? And you don't get no funky in Chitlin's, man. Let me tell you. Hey, Preston. Hey, buddy. Thanks a lot for dropping in with us again, man. We really appreciate everything that you're doing out there. How you're putting us on the map out there with your books, man. You're putting us on the map, and hopefully we can live up to some of the things, I guess some of the loftier things that we think about in our country. Memphis has come a long way. It's come a long way. We have no more boss crumps, like him, but we have some bosses, but not boss crumps. So
that's right. That's right. Well, thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, buddy. See you again here next time on Funky Politics. I'll be right back with some closing thoughts, y'all.
I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
That's right. That's right. I just want to live. I just want to live. That's what we want to do. That's what I wish for all of you all. I wish for my son who's 19. I just want him to live, right? I want him to be much older than I'll ever be, whatever that number may be. But I tell you what, having Preston Lauterbach on today reminds me of those allies we have out there who we know that are researching, who are writing, who are talking, who are speaking, who are singing. And they're saying, we're with you. We're with you and we can't quit you. That's what I'm talking about. Having people like Preston in this mix, talking about how do we get to the next level in terms of killing this racial divide we've got in our country right now. The president is making his decision on how he's going to run his campaign right now. As a matter of fact, he's going to have a rally here very soon with they call them MAGA. Some of us call them maggots, but they're Americans. So they're people who believe that he's right. I happen to disagree with most of them and most of what he says, but I will say this, that we've got a lot of work to do. Come November 3rd, we've got a lot of work to do. And then after November 3rd, we got a lot of rebuilding to do, because if we are blessed and we are lucky, and we are blessed and we are lucky, we'll be seeing another person take that office come January 20th. Also, something really new. I just hit me. Amy Klobuchar said she's going to back away. She doesn't want to be considered as vice presidential timber on the ticket with Joe Biden. She says that she believes there ought to be a black female on that ticket. Man, the world, boy, is really a change, isn't it? I tell you what, don't go far. We will be back here with more episodes right here live with you on Funky Politics. I love what I do. I hope you love checking us out. We'll see you next time. I'm just excited because this is a funky kind of Friday. I'm excited about what I think the future holds for our country. Black lives still matter. Buy black. You know what? Happy Juneteenth.